November 1952. That's when I started working at Blackwater Oil Rig as a day shift worker. I lived in a cramped little room with 2 bunk beds. Even though there were 4 beds, only 3 of them were occupied. Me, John Carlisle, 26 years old, from Indiana, Duncan O'Reilly, a big, overweight fellow from Cork, Ireland, and another man about my age named Matthew Doyle. Duncan said he was from New York. Matthew was a skinny fella, skin pale as a dead man's, face gaunt like a dried tree branch, black messy hair, and a stick-thin figure. He looked like he'd spent his whole life down in bunkers eating canned beans and hadn't seen the sun since the day he was born. I tried speaking to him once or twice, trying to get acquainted, but he never struck me as the friendly sort. Besides, he worked the night shift while I worked days. During the daytime, whenever I came back to the room and found him asleep, he'd always be clutching a machete in his hands. Why? I always wanted to ask. But Matthew never cared much for conversation, so I left it alone. One afternoon, during lunch hour, I called home to speak with my ma and pa, using the telephone near the bunkhouse. If the line connected at all, you counted yourself lucky. Bad weather and poor infrastructure made sure of that. After the call, I hung up and started to leave. Then the phone rang again. I stopped dead in my tracks. How on earth? I'd never seen anyone call this place before. I picked up the receiver. Hello? Silence. No static, no breathing, no sound at all. Then came a woman's voice. "May I speak to Matthew?" she asked softly. Even though it sounded like an ordinary woman speaking plainly enough, a chill ran down my spine that I couldn't explain. Still, I gathered myself and replied, "He might be asleep. He works nights. May I ask who's calling? I can pass the message along." A few seconds passed before she answered. "Diane." Then she hung up. I stood there bewildered. Even though I'd never heard her voice before in my life, something about it felt strangely familiar, and that terrible chill in my bones. I couldn't shake it. After my shift, I tried speaking to Matthew, but he'd already left by the time I returned to the bunkhouse. Fine, I thought. I'll tell him tomorrow morning. But the next morning, I had to leave for my shift before he came back in. That afternoon, after calling my parents again, the telephone rang once more. "You didn't tell him I called, did you, John?" It was Diane. "Sorry, miss, I couldn't. He'd already left when I got back yesterday, and he didn't return before my shift started this morning." I paused. "Wait just a minute. How do you know my name? Please tell him today." And with that, she hung up without answering my question. How did she know my name? Matthew must have told her somehow. What else could it be? Or maybe I mentioned it during the first call and simply forgot. Either way, it didn't seem important at the time. That evening, I got back early. Luckily, Matthew wasn't asleep. He was just getting ready to leave. "Hey, Matthew," I said. "Need to tell you something." He looked at me with an annoyed expression. "Someone called asking for you yesterday. Said her name was Diane." I watched his expression change instantly into pure terror. "Who?" he asked quietly. "Diane." Matthew said nothing. He just sat down on the edge of the bed, looking absolutely horrified. "Who is she?" I asked. "Your wife? Sweetheart or something?" "Was," he muttered. "Not anymore." "Oh, divorced?" "No." He slowly looked up at me. "She's dead,"